your knowledge and insight about the beautiful game, without anyone discovering that before reading it you didn't know the difference between a hairdryer and handbags at dawn. Footnote: Gender matters. It should be made clear that wherever in this book the impression is given that all football fans, players and officials are male, it is for reasons of grammatical convenience. It is not intended to suggest that men are more likely than women to have a keener grasp of the game. And if you should fall into that trap, just remind yourself of the fate of expert Sky football presenters Richard Keys and Andy Gray, who were required to step down after a notorious sexism row when they questioned the job suitability of female Premier League assistant referee Sian Massey, who clearly knows more about the offside rule than most men. Rules of engagement. The first recorded mention of football was over 2,000 years ago in China. The Yellow Emperor is said to have developed his soldiers' leg muscles by making them play with a stone football. References to heading the ball are notable by their absence. It has been said that sport is a continuation of war by other means. For much of its history, football has tended to forget about the by other means bit. Games in the British Isles were for centuries little more than an excuse for mass fights, with hundreds of players on each side. The residents of Chester are said to have celebrated victory over the marauding Danes by playing football with the head of a defeated opponent. This attitude to the sport continues to this day among the supporters of Millwall Football Club. The rules of football were first formalised at Cambridge University in 1846, when Messrs. H. de Winton and J. C. Thring met to decide a unified code for the game. Their deliberations took just under 8 hours, thereby establishing the tradition that football should always be talked about for far longer than it takes to actually play the game. This tradition lives on with Sky TV's post-match analyses. The first meeting of the Football Association, FA, was on 26th of October 1863 at the Freemasons Tavern in London's Covent Garden, near the headquarters of the Freemasons. The Bluffer might admit to holding a suitably jaundiced view of the FA, pointing out the irony of its early connection to an organisation famed for its secretive practices and refusal to explain itself to the outside world. The World Game is now governed by FIFA, the International Federation of Association Football. The fact that these initials are in the wrong order tells you everything you need to know about this organisation. Admittedly, the French name is actually Fédération Internationale de Football Association. But why spoil a good story? Never overburdened by headlines claiming that their procedures are completely above board and utterly legitimate, FIFA's biggest brush with scandal came during the bidding process for the 2022 World Cup. Having weighed up the respective bids of the various countries competing to host the tournament, Sepp Blatter, the body's then president, announced that he and his cronies, well-respected fellow bureaucrats, had decided on Qatar. The fact that this former British protectorate sounds like a medical complaint is the least of its worries when it comes to being taken seriously as a home for football's biggest showpiece. There are issues concerning the country's policies on human rights, freedom of the press, and, most crucially, the availability of alcohol. But the main practical problem is that in June and July, when the World Cup is always held, Qatar is so hot that players and fans could suffer serious dehydration, especially if the English supporters are deprived of their prescribed ingestion of generous quantities of lager. One suggestion was that leagues around the world could take a mid-season break to allow the World Cup to run during the winter. You can imagine how well those leagues responded to that. Your line on this is that the World Cup should be awarded to countries that have a tried and trusted record of hosting it, and are conspicuously good at hosting big sporting events such as the Olympics. To pick one utterly at random, let's take for example, England. In the months of June and July, countries like Qatar might meanwhile be better left to host the World Frying an Egg on the Bonnet of a Car Championship. Kicking the bladder. Those who wish to deride football always refer to it as 22